Hello again. Look, I've got a deer collection for you. Deers everywhere. Found this one in the bottom of a box. He wasn't going to make it onto the tree, and now he is. If it hadn't been for this story and me thinking, I think I've got a deer somewhere else, but I've got no idea. Sorry, terrible joke. I think I've got a deer somewhere else. If it hadn't been for this story, I never would have looked him up. So lucky you. Thank you. Thank you, Stories 7. Anyway, I'm going to carry on with Godfather Drosselmere's story. All about the battle with the mouse. I've forgotten her name now. The mouse mama, you know, the one whose all her children have been killed. And we find ourselves back in Mary and Fred's house with Godfather Drosselmere telling the rest of the story. Next evening, as soon as the candles were lighted, Godfather Drosselmere made his appearance and went on with the story as follows. 15 years were Drosselmere and the court astronomer on their travels, without coming on a trace of the Nutcrackertak, where they wandered far and wide, what strange and wonderful things they fell in with. All this I could go on telling you for a month, but will do nothing of the kind. Enough to say that the sore troubled Drosselmere was at length seized by a mighty longing for his native place, Nuremberg. With extraordinary violence, this longing one day overpowered him as he sat in a great wood in Asia, smoking a pipe of tobacco with his friend. Oh, my beautiful mother city, who never has seen thee is much to pity. Though he travelled to London, to Rome, to Bern, after thee his heart must always yearn. After thee, O Nuremberg town so dear, that hath beautiful houses and windows clear. As Drosselmere lifted up his voice so dolefully, the astronomer was moved by deep sympathy and began to give forth such lamentable howls that they could be heard over a great part of Asia. He must have been very loud. Then, composing himself, he wiped the tears from his eyes. But my worthy colleague, why do we sit here and cry? Why not go to Nuremberg, since it's all one, and how we search for that fate? So it's all one... Since it's all one, where and how we search for that fated nutcrackertak. That's true enough, answered Drosselmere, taking comfort, and both at once stood up, knocked the ashes out of their pipes, and went off in a straight line, without stopping, from the wood in the middle of Asia to the city of Nuremberg. Now that was a longer walk than mine today. That was a really long walk. Scarcely had they arrived there than Drosselmere hastened to his cousin, the dollmaker, varnisher and gilder, Christopher Zacharias Drosselmere, whom he'd not seen for many, many years. To him now the clockmaker related the whole history of Princess Pillypat, of the Lady Mousekins, that was her name, and of the Nutcrackertak, so that he struck his hands together and cried out, full of astonishment, "Oh, cousin, what a wonderful story!" Drosselmere went on to tell of the adventures of his long travel, how he spent 2 years with the Date King, how he was contemptuously turned away by the Prince of Almonds, how he made inquiries in vain of the Natural History Society in Squirrel's Town. In short, how everywhere he had failed to get even a hint about the Nutcrackertak. During this narration, Christopher Zacharias kept snapping his fingers and turning about on one foot and clicking his tongue, and then exclaiming, "Oh, the juice!" Finally, he threw his cap and wig up in the air and warmly embraced his kinsman and cried out, Cousin, you are saved! Saved you are, I say, for am much mistaken if I do not myself possess the Nutcrackertak." At the same time, he pulled out a box from which he drew forth a gilded nut of middling bigness. Gilded, so this cousin gilded things. So basically what gilding is putting a tiny, tiny bit of real gold on things. You can put them on nuts, you can put them on sugar, you can put them in sugar lumps, you can put them on anything. He was a gilder, and he had gilded a nut. "See," he said, showing the nut to his cousin. "This is the state of the case. Years ago, a foreigner came to me at Christmas time with a sack full of nuts which he wanted to sell right before my shop. He got into a quarrel and laid down the sack that he might better defend himself against the nutcrackers of the town, nut sellers of the town who would not allow a stranger to sell nuts here, and attacked him on that account. At that moment, a heavily loaded wagon rolled over the sack and all the nuts were broken except one, which the foreigner, with a queer smile, offered me in exchange for a silver groat of the year 1720. A groat is a coin. It struck me as singular that I found in my pocket just such a coin as the man wanted, so I brought the nut and I gilded it, hardly knowing myself why I paid so dear for the thing and treated it as if it was of such value." All doubt of the cousin's nut being that long sought for one became at once removed when the astronomer, summoned into council, cleverly scraped away the gilding, and on the rind of the nut found engraved in Chinese characters the word Crackertak. Great was the joy of the travellers, and the cousin the happiest man under the sun, when Drosselmeer assured him of his fortune being made, for besides a good pension he should henceforth receive gracias of all the gold leaf he needed for his gilding. Both the clockmaker and astronomer had already put on their nightcaps and were going to bed, when the latter, that is, the astronomer, thus begun. "My beloved colleague, one piece of luck comes not alone. Believe me, we have found not only the nutcrackertak, but also the young man who can crack it and restore the princess to her beauty. I mean none other than the son of your worthy cousin. Nay, I will not sleep," he continued enthusiastically, "but this very night will cast the youth's horoscope." Therefore he tore out his nightcap and at once set about taking observations. The cousin's son was indeed a nice, well-grown young man who'd never shaved or worn boots. In his earlier youth he'd acted as a jumping jack for several Christmases, but that was not the least perceptible, as his father had taken so much pains to educate him and set him straight. At Christmas time he wore a fine red coat laced with gold, a sword, a hat under his arm, a first-class head of hair gathered into a bag behind, and so splendidly adorned he stood in his father's shop and out of natural politeness cracked nuts for the young ladies, on which account they called him the handsome little nutcracker. Well. Looks like they found him. Let's see what happens next in tomorrow night's rendition with Kate of The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. See you later. Night, night.
Bye-bye. Thank you for saving me.